Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All magic fun, all cards for $1. I'm David, and today we're going to be looking at the 2018 Preconstructed Commander deck, Subjective Reality. Now, we're going to be reviewing every single card in this deck and having a look at to see whether it fits well and whether it's a good card or a bad card for this deck. And we're also going to be giving you $25 worth of upgrade suggestions so you can see whether you want to swap out some of these cards. So let's have a look at the commander. The commander is Aminatou, the Fate Stitcher. For a white, a blue, and a black. So for 3 mana, it is a 3 loyalty planeswalker. And her +1 is to draw a card and then put a card from your hand on top of your library. So that already shows that this deck kind of wants to do some top deck of your library manipulation. The -1 is exile another target permanent you own, then return it to the battlefield under your control, which means that we can actually flicker permanents, not only the ones that are under our control, but also the ones that we own, which is pretty cool in case somebody else takes control of some of our permanents. And then the -6 is choose left or right. Then each player gains control of all non-land permanents other than Aminatou, the Fate Stitcher, controlled by the next player in the chosen direction. So we're going to just shuffle everything we've got except for the lands in either the left or right direction, with the exception of our commander. And of course, our commander is pretty cool that is going to be able to get some of those permanents back with the -1 ability. So what is the role of the commander? The role of the commander is going to be top deck manipulation and flickering. So we're going to be flickering stuff. Let's see if the deck does exactly that properly, but that's for later. First, what are the cards that are included in this deck? Of course, we've got 1 commander. We've got 23 top deck manipulation cards, 12 removal cards, 9 random cards. We didn't know where to put this category, so that's why we made a random category. 15 utility cards and 40 lands. So let's get started with the top deck cards first. We divided the top deck cards into manipulation cards and synergy cards. So the first category is cards that manipulate the top of our library, and the second ones are cards that like that is being done. So let's have a look at the first manipulation card, and that is Brainstorm for a single blue. It's an instant that allows us to draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from our hand on top of our library. So this is pretty much essentially what we want to be doing in this deck. Partially is putting cards from our hand on top of the library so we know what is the top card of our library. We could do some shenanigans with that later. Portent is next for a single blue. It's a sorcery this time. We're going to look at the top 3 cards of target player's library, then put them back in any order, and we may have that player shuffle his or her library, and we're going to draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So we can, once again, we would be able to manipulate and see what is going to come, and if we don't like it, we can just throw everything away. Thematically, it's a fine card. However, we have an upgrade suggestion, and the card that we would like to replace this card with is Soothsaying. For a single blue, it's an enchantment, so it's going to stay on the battlefield, unlike the sorcery. And it allows us for 3 and 2 blues, so for 5 mana to shuffle our library. So this can be done repeatedly. In case we don't like what's on top, we can just shuffle the whole thing. But we can also pay X and then look at the top X cards of our library and then put them back in any order. This is sweet because that means that effect that Portent actually gives us one time, we can actually, for a little bit of extra mana, we can continuously do that every single turn. At the end of our turn, instant speeds, not sorcery speed, manipulate the top, reorder things with any extra mana that we happen to have left over. Ponder is next for a single blue. It's a sorcery. We're going to look at the top 3 cards of your library, put them back in any order, and then shuffle. We may shuffle our library if we want to, and we can also draw a card. Okay, so it's a fine card. Yes, is the other card better? Yeah, but we can leave this one in. We don't need to replace every single one of these cards. Sigiled Starfish is next for 1 and a blue. It is a 0/3 Starfish that we can tap to scry 1. That means we're going to look at the top card of our library. If we like it, we leave it. If we don't like it, we can move it to the bottom of the library. In essence, this is a fine card. This is actually what this deck wants to be doing, so you could leave it in. However, we did find a card that we would actually like to swap out as an upgrade suggestion, and that is Demonlord Belzenlok for 4 and 2 black, so for 6 mana. It is a 6/6 legendary Elder Demon with flying and trample. Clearly a strict upgrade from Sigiled Starfish. It has an ability which says that when it enters the battlefield, we're going to exile the top cards of our library until we exile a non-land card. Then we put that card into our hand. If the card's converted mana cost is 4 or greater, we're going to repeat that process every time. It's going to deal us 1 point of damage. So essentially, if we're able to see what is going to be the top cards of our library, we can make sure that they're all mana cost 4 or greater. We can draw all of them when Demonlord Belzenlok comes in. And of course, it is a 6/6 flying trampler, which means it's also win condition all rolled into one. Telling Time is next for 1 and a blue. It's an instant. We're going to look at the top 3 cards of our library, put one of those cards into our hand, the one at the top of our library, and the other one at the bottom of our library. So essentially, we are going to be able to draw a card, and we actually get to see what's going to be the next card because we're putting something at the top as well. Find card, actually, you could leave it in. However, we decided that we would like to replace it with Haunted Crossroads for 2 and a black, so for 3 mana. It's an enchantment, so this one stays on the battlefield. And for a single black, we can put our creature card from our graveyard on top of our library. Now, we will see in a minute with the synergy cards, the cards that this deck does care about what's at the top of the library. So being able to get any creature that's in our graveyard, whether we milled it there, whether the creature died, whether we discarded it there, we're going to be able to put that one on top of the library, which is going to be super great, especially with the later cards. We're going to see that. Up next is Dream Cache for 2 and a blue. It's a sorcery. Draw 3 cards, choose 2 cards from your hand, and put both on either top or bottom of your library. Okay, well, it's just, okay, again, manipulation. We can't take them all out, so we're leaving this one in. The cat is clearly protesting that, but regardless, we are still leaving that card in. We're moving on to Crystal Ball, which is also a flying card for 3 colorless. It's an artifact that we can pay 1, tap it to scry 2. Now, you'd be surprised how often you get to scry 1. Scry 2 does not really come across that often, and this is actually for just a single mana, and tapping it is quite powerful, and I think it fits really well in the deck, and the fact that you can do it repeatedly means I think it's actually a really nice addition. Seer's Lantern is next for 3. It's an artifact that can tap for a colorless mana, so it's ramp actually, but additionally you can pay 2 and tap it to scry 1. Yes, it's a bit more expensive, we scry less than the Crystal Ball, but the fact that it also functions as ramp is a nice added bonus. Sphinx of Jawar Isle is next for 4 and 2 blue. It's a 5/5 flyer with Shroud, so this is actually not a bad beater. A 5/5 flyer in the air is pretty decent, and additionally may look at the top card of our library. Now, there's no true manipulation here, but always being able to see what's on top does give us that advantage, because we will be able to see whether our synergy cards will be able to use something or not, whether we want to activate those triggers, regardless of whether at that point in time we can manipulate it. And maybe we have to invest some mana to manipulate it, and then the Sphinx of Jawar Isle will give us that ability to know whether that is actually worth it or not. Next is Lightform for, now we've moved on to the synergy cards. So these are going to be the cards that care about what's at the top of our library. And the first card is Lightform for 1 and 2 white. So for 3 mana, it's an enchantment. Now when this enchantment enters the battlefield, we're going to, what is it called? Manifest. That means we're going to take the top card of our library, we're going to put it onto the battlefield face down. It's going to become a 2/2 manifested creature, and which we can actually turn around if it's a creature for its mana cost. And then we're going to attach Lightform to it, and then that creature is going to be a 2/2 with flying and lifelink. Now, we get the idea why this card is in here. You know, you manifest a card, then you can flicker with your commander. You can flicker the creature or whatever was underneath it, and then you can turn it around. Great. Okay, it enters again, and now all of a sudden it is whatever permanent that was. Fantastic. Seems like a bit of a lot of hoops to have it jump through, so we're actually going to replace it with something which I think a little bit less hoops. And the upgrade card is Augury Adept for 1 and 2 hybrid mana, which can be either white or blue. We get a 2/2 Kitkin Wizard, and whenever this guy deals combat damage to a player, we're going to reveal the top card of our library and put that card into our hand, and you gain life equal to its converted mana cost. So it's going to be additionally giving us draw and also giving us life, which actually this deck doesn't have a lot of, so that's kind of nice. Jeskai Infiltrator is next for 2 and a blue. We get a 2/3 human monk, and this guy can't be blocked as long as you control no other creatures. We'll see how likely that is. However, if this guy does deal combat damage to a player, we're going to exile it and the top card of our library face down and shuffle that pile, then manifest those cards. So essentially, we're going to turn this guy and whatever's the top card into the manifest creatures. And then, of course, we will be able to flicker them and then turn them back into these creatures for free, or we can just pay their converted mana cost, in this case, 3 mana for Jeskai Infiltrator, to turn it back into the regular creature. Cloudform is next for 1 and 2 blue, so it's the same as Lightform, but then the blue version of this is an enchantment. Again, Manifest is going to go on top of it. This time the creature is going to have flying and hexproof, and of course the idea is that we flicker it. I think, once again, too many hoops to jump over. Cat disagrees fervently at this point. I'm going to have to go, no, we're going to have to upgrade this card to Future Sight. Future Sight costs 2 and 3 blue mana, so 5 mana, and it's an enchantment. And it states that we play with the top card of a library revealed. Yes, other people can also see what's at the top, but we can also see what's on the top. And additionally, and this is crucial, you may play the top card of your library. That's nice. You can play a land. Of course, that does count towards your 1 land per turn. But you can play that. You could play maybe another. Maybe there's Brainstorm on there. You can play that. Then whatever cards are needed. As long as you got enough mana, you can keep on playing from the top of your library and maintaining that hand intact and saving that for some time when you may not have Future Sight, or maybe there's a land and you can't play that anymore, and then you can start going from your hand. So it gives a great advantage being able to play multiple cards from this. Entreat the Angels is up next for 2 times X and 3 times white. So essentially this sorcery is going to create X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying. Now the double X and the triple white is excessive, which means that you would need to pay 5 mana to create a single angel. That is way too much. However, it does have a miracle cost, which means that if we cast this card, if we draw this card, the first card that we draw this turn, then we're actually allowed to pay an X and 2 white instead of the 2X and 3 white. So it really does matter that this is the first card that we draw that turn, because then we're going to be able to create loads of very cheap angels, and that is going to blow people out entirely. It's a very strong card, but really only when we're drawing it as the first card and playing it right away. So this is one of those typical cards that really cares about the manipulation of the top deck of our library, top card of our library. And next up, Entreat the Dead. This is the black version, double X, triple black sorcery, but this time we're going to return X target creature cards from our graveyard to the battlefield. And again, the miracle cost is X and 2 black. So once again, we really want to make sure that this is the first card we draw. We want to play it right away, make sure we get all these fatties in the graveyard, pull them all out. It's going to be awesome. Great card, functions the same as Entreat the Angels and just as good. Then the next card, Duskmantle Seer for 2, a black and a blue. So for 4 mana, it's a 4/4 flyer, which is a fine card. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player reveals the top card of his or her library, loses life equal to the card's converted mana cost, then puts it into his or her hand. Now, this is a fine card. You could leave it in. Once again, the synergy is still quite on point so far. And the 4/4 flyer is also fine. However, we will be losing a lot of life, and there are other ways that we're going to be losing life in this deck. And additionally, it also gives advantage to everybody else. So in this case, what we would like to do is upgrade this card with Resolute Archangel. For 5 and 2 white, we get a 4/4 flyer. And when this guy enters the battlefield, your life total becomes your starting life total. So you may say, okay, is that really exactly the same? It's not exactly the same. This is not a direct upgrade. This is the card that is going to be taking advantage of our commander's flicker ability. Doesn't matter how low we get, as long as we're not dead, being able to flicker this card repeatedly means we get back all the way to 40 life, and that is absolutely insane. A great target for flickering, and once again, it's also a 4/4 flyer, just like Duskmantle Seer, so we're not losing any power or evasion there. Next card, Aether Mage's Touch for 2, a white and a blue. So for 4 mana, it's an instant. We're going to reveal the top cards of our library, then we put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. It gains at the beginning of your end step, return this creature to its owner's hand, then put the rest of the cards revealed this way at the bottom of your library in any order. So it's important now that we make sure that we've got a nice big juicy fatty, like for example Resolute Archangel, within those top 4 cards of our library, because then we're going to cheat it in, and then we're going to be able to put it back in the hand and then recast it later on again. Conundrum Sphinx for 2 and 2 blue, so for 4 mana, it's a 4/4 flyer. This is greatly costed, and this is actually quite a lot of power for such a low cost. Additionally, when this creature attacks, each player names a card. Then each player reveals the top card of his or her library. If a card a player revealed is the card he or she named, that player puts it into his or her hand. If not, that player puts it in the bottom of his or her library. Okay, so you may say, oh, it's symmetrical. It's not really symmetrical effect, because our opponents will have no idea what card is at the top of their library, and we most certainly will know. So that's essentially going to be giving us that free draw, and it's also pretty strong creature in the air for a very low cost. Primordial Mist is next for 4 and a blue. So for 5 mana, it's an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you may manifest the top card of your library. So once again, at the beginning of our end steps, at the end of our turn, so it comes in and immediately that turn it will already do something. We're turning those tops of the top card of our library into 2/2 creatures, which of course we can flicker later on to be able to turn them around, cheat them into play. And additionally, we can exile a face down permanent we control. Face up, you may play this card this turn, but you still have to pay the cost, and the timing rules still apply. So this gives us far more flexibility than what normally Manifest does, because of course those we can only turn around when it's an actual creature for the mana cost, and this says permanent, and we can just play it. So that is, sorry, it could be any card, but it's not limited to being a creature, which is super, super awesome because of that extra flexibility for those Manifest effects. Djinn of Wishes costs 3 and 2 blues, so for 5 mana, it's a 4/4 flyer. We've got a lot of very good evasion creatures in this deck. And additionally, when it enters the battlefield, it's going to come in with 3 wish counters on them. And for 2 and 2 blues, so for 4 mana, we can remove a wish counter from it and then reveal the top card of our library and then play that card without paying its mana cost. If you don't, we can exile it. Well, so essentially, we know what's at the top because we're doing deck manipulation. So for 4 mana, we're going to be able to cheat stuff into play every single turn, which is super sweet. Jeanette, Cryptic Sovereign for 2, a white, a blue, and a black. It is a legendary 3/5 Sphinx. It's got flying, vigilance, and menace. This deck can also smack pretty hard by the looks of it. Whenever this card attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If the card's converted mana cost is odd, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Otherwise, draw a card. So we're going to put it into our hand. That is pretty sick because this creature can do it all. Essentially, you could also use this card as your commander, actually, because this thing can attack, it can block. It's difficult to block because it's flying and the menace. So that means it's pretty much always going to be attacking anyway, whether it's blocked or not. And we do have a lot of oddly converted mana costed creatures and other effects in this deck, which means we will be playing a lot of stuff for free anyway, which is like Djinn of Wishes, for example. It's pretty super sweet. Then we move on to Enigma Sphinx for 4, a white, a blue, and a black, so for 7 mana. Again, an odd costed creature. This is a 5/4 flying Sphinx, and when this creature is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, we're going to put it on the library 3rd from the top. So once again, this is kind of manipulating because we also know what's going to be in what order of the stuff. But additionally, it has Cascade, which means when we cast a spell, we're going to exile cards from the top of our library until we exile a non-land card that costs less. It's going to be pretty much the first thing that we're going to come across, and then we're going to cast that one or play it without paying its mana cost. So that is going to be super sweet. So we're going to be playing free stuff, then people might kill it, and then we're going to put it back. So that is going to be super nice. However, remember that this will not trigger if it just enters the battlefield because it's being manifested. It has to be when you cast this spell. So that is important to remember. But then again, when you kill it, it goes to the top of the library. We're going to draw it next in a couple of turns anyway, so then we can cast it. Then we have Aminatou's Augury for 6 and 2 blues. So that's a whopping 8 mana. It's a sorcery. We're going to exile the top 8 cards of our library, and then we put a land card from among onto the battlefield, and then until the end of turn, for each non-land card type, you may cast a card of that type from among the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So essentially, we're going to look at the top 8 cards. We could play a land, we could play an enchantment, we could play pretty much anything that's a non-land. So we're going to be playing the land as well. So we're playing anything we want. Of course, only 1 per type, but still this is going to be pretty crazy. Army of the Damned is the last of the synergy cards, and that costs 5 and 3 black, so it's also a whopping 8 mana. It's a sorcery. It's got create 13 tapped 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. That is going to be a huge army. I don't think there's any card that produces this many tokens for such an inexpensive cost. Additionally, because it also has flashback, which means that for 10 mana, of which 3 black, we may cast this card from my graveyard for its flashback cost, then exile it. So it doesn't really have too much synergy unless, of course, you calculate that you could dump this card into the graveyard, you could discard it, and it wouldn't be the end of the world because you could always cast it with flashback. So then we move on to the removal spells. The first of the removal spells is High Priest of Penance for a white and a black. So for 2 mana, it's a 1/1 human cleric. It states that whenever this creature is dealt damage, you may destroy target non-land permanent. Okay, we see it's kind of a defensive card. You know, if people attack into you, they don't want to because it might, then you're going to block with this creature. Of course it dies, but then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to kill that. I'm going to destroy that non-land permanent, that artifact, that enchantment, that planeswalker, whatever. And so people don't want to do that. So it's kind of cool in that sense. It has, however, 0 synergy with the deck. With the flickering, for example, it doesn't help us in that sense. Doesn't help with the top deck manipulation, and it's also not very proactive. It's not instant speed removal. We can't target stuff right off the bat. So if people don't want to trigger this, they will make sure that we don't. And we don't really have a lot of effects to deal damage to our own stuff. So this card we're going to suggest that we get rid of, even though it's a fun card. Let's get rid of it and let's upgrade it with Dead Reckoning for a mana. So for 1, 2 black, so for 3 mana it's a sorcery, and we may put target creature card from our graveyard on top of our library, and if we do, Dead Reckoning deals damage equal to that card's power to target creature. So it's removal and top deck manipulation, getting that thing, the good stuff, good creature back on top of our library, and also killing something. Mortify is next for 1, a white and a black, so for 3 mana it is an instant this time, and this is perfect because it allows us to destroy target creature or enchantment. Simple. This deck loves this card. It is absolutely perfect. She should have definitely been here, and it is, so we're actually happy about that. Crib Swap is up next for 2 and a white. It's an instant as well for 3 mana, and we're going to exile target creature. Its controller puts a 1/1 colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling onto the battlefield. Sure, it's fine. It exiles a creature. Exiling is good. We do enjoy that. The fact that they get a 1/1 is completely irrelevant. You could leave it in. It's fine removal. However, we have thought to ourselves, could we upgrade it with something a little bit better? And we thought we did, and that is the card Angel of Despair for 3, 2 white, and 2 black. So for 7 mana, once again, oddly costed, we have a 5/5 Flying Angel. Now, when this creature enters the battlefield, we're going to destroy target permanent. Now, this is pretty much as sweet as it gets. It destroys anything you want. Lands, enchantments, artifacts, just anything that's on the battlefield, we're going to be able to destroy it. So the beauty of this card is, of course, playing it, destroying a permanent, using our Commander's Flicker ability, having it enter the battlefield again, destroying another permanent. That, being able to destroy 2 permanents in 1 turn and having a 5/5 Flying Angel is going to be absolutely ridiculous. And especially offensive if the way that we got it onto the battlefield the first time was cheating it into play. Up next is Utter End for 2, a white and a black. So for 4 mana instant, exile target non-land permanent. Okay, best of both worlds. We're hitting pretty much any permanent, and we're also exiling. So this is just lovely because it's also instant speed. Some of the best removal possible. Next up, Return to Dust for 2 and 2 white. So for 4 mana, it's an instant that allows us to exile target artifact or enchantment. But if we cast it in our main phase, we can actually be able to hit 2 artifacts or enchantments. So that is super sweet. We're going to be able to get rid of 2 artifacts or 2 enchantments or an artifact and an enchantment. And the fact that it's exiling is super, super sweet. Yes, in a pinch, we use it instant speed in our opponent's turn, but then usually probably meant that it was very important anyway. Then the last of the targeted spells, it's not the last of the targeted spells, we move on to Banishing Stroke for 5 and a white. It's an instant. We're going to put target artifact, creature, or enchantment on the bottom of its owner library, and we have the miracle cost of 1 white, which means if we draw it first card in turn, we can play it for a single mana, and that is, of course, awesome removal because of the fact that it hits artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. I mean, those are pretty much the main cards you want to be using your removal on anyway. So that is super, super sweet. Then we move on to the last of the targeted spells, and that is Skull Storm for 7 and 2 blacks. That's 9 mana. That is absolutely insane. That's almost criminally expensive to charge this much. But let's see what it does. It's a sorcery. When you cast a spell, copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this time. So we're going to have to be recasting our commander a bunch of times. We've probably lost our commander a bunch of times. And each opponent sacrifices a creature. Each opponent who can't loses half his or her life rounded up. So even if we would do this, let's say twice, maybe 3 times, at the point in time when you got 9 mana and somebody doesn't have 3 creatures to sacrifice, it's just, I don't even know what's happening at this point. So I think it's just a terrible card, especially if you can get something like the zombie or the Marauder, which costs 3 mana and comes in, each opponent has to, or each player has to sacrifice a creature, that is simply much, much stronger. So don't even pay 9 mana for something like this. Let's upgrade it. And the upgrade card we have selected is Mastery of the Unseen. For 1, any white, it's an enchantment, and it says that whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, we're going to gain 1 life for each creature we control. So that's cool because we want to be flipping cards up. We got manifest effects. And additionally, for 3 and a white, we can manifest the top card of our library. So cool. Now finally we have a way to reliably start cheating those cards from the top of our library into play, whether it's cards that we actually want to flip over later or cards that we don't want to use but we can just turn them into creatures. This card gives us a reliable way to consistently manifest the top card of our library should we want to do that. We move on to the board wipe. And the first one is Magus of the Balance for 1 and a white. So for 2 mana, it's a 2/2 human wizard, which for 4 and a white and tapping it. So for 5 mana, we can sacrifice it. And then each player chooses a number of lands they control equal to the number of lands controlled by the player who controls the fewest, then sacrifices the rest. Players discard cards and sacrifice creatures the same way. So it's not even a full board wipe. It just brings everybody down to about the same of everything, which means that people will be able to select the best stuff. So if people have more, you're not going to be able to get rid of their best thing. It's just not a great mechanic. So we're going to upgrade this card. And we're going to upgrade it into something which is actually not in this category. We're going to upgrade it to Arbiter of the Ideal for 4 and 2 blue. So for 6 mana, it's going to be a 4/5 flying Sphinx, again giving us more power in the air. And it's got Inspired, which means that whenever this creature becomes untapped, so first it's going to have to it's going to attack, it's going to become tapped, and then in the next upkeep we're going to untap it. So whenever at that point in time when it becomes untapped, we're going to reveal the top card of our library. So it's good because we know what's going to be the top card of our library. If it's an artifact, creature, or land card, we may put it onto the battlefield with a manifestation counter on it. That permanent is an enchantment in addition to its other types. So the manifestation counter, that doesn't really matter. The only thing that it means is that, sure, you revealed that big fat Sphinx, now it's a creature and it's also an enchantment. So it can also be hit by enchantment removal. But other than that, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to leave when targeted or anything like that. It's still going to be just as chunky and just as nice to cheat into play. Devastation Tide is up next for 3 and 2 blue. It's going to allow us to return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So this is the perfect blue board wipe. And additionally, it's got a miracle cost of 1 and blue. So that is almost criminally cheap, especially considering that even if we did draw it, there's ways for us to put it back on top of our library and then drawing it later to be able to get it for that miracle cost. That is pretty nasty. Of course, remember that whenever you do want to play it, when you draw it, has to be the first card you draw that turn. Up next is Knight Incarnate for 4 and a black. It's a 3/4 elemental with Death Touch, and when it leaves the battlefield, all creatures get -3/-3 until the end of turn. And it's also got an evoke cost of 3 and a black, which means if you play the evoke, it comes in and then it dies right away. So a couple of things. So it's a cool card. I like this card. It's Death Touch I always like, especially in Commander when we've got really big fatties that they want to swing at you. This is a great deterrent. However, 5 mana is quite steep for a Death Touch. I don't think that's going to be completely worth it. Additionally, the fact that it doesn't do this when it comes in, that would be great. If it comes in and then it made give all creatures -3/-3, awesome, because this creature would survive it. So it would actually still leave you with the creature and kill all the smaller creatures. Awesome. But we have to do with the... so if we actually do want to do a board wipe, then we have to use the evoke cost because we can't guarantee that people will kill it. So we got to do the evoke cost. So we're paying 1 less. It comes in, it dies. And yes, we did a board wipe for 4 mana, giving everything -3/-3. So it's an okay card, gives some flexibility. However, I think there's something much better we can be doing with our 5 mana, and that is the upgrade card Lavinia of the 10th for 3, a white and a blue. So for 5 mana, it's a 4/4 human soldier with protection from red. Now, that's not the important part. The part is that when it enters the battlefield, we're going to detain each non-land permanent your opponents control with converted mana cost 4 or less. That means it comes in. Now, all their mana rocks, all their creatures, all their artifacts that cost 4 or less, everything's going to be shut down because detain means that until your next turn, so that means that from the moment it comes in, all the turns pass, and then only again when it's your turn again, they won't be able to attack, block, or use their activated abilities. So that is absolutely sick. If you can flicker this thing multiple times, it gets absolutely ridiculous, shutting people down completely. But even just one time, and then maybe with our commander do it just one more time in next turn is going to be absolutely brutal. Terminus is next for 4 and 2 white, so for 6 mana, it's a sorcery. We're going to put all creatures in the bottom of their owner's library, and the miracle cost is a single white. Now, this is well, removal in the same vein as Devastation Tide was before. We still had all that stuff in our hands. Now it's essentially as if we're exiling because we're putting everything at the bottom of our owner's library, which means it's much more difficult for people to get to, kind of like exiling it. Because of course, if stuff goes to the graveyard, there's a lot of decks that can still take advantage of that. And then the last of the board wipes, and that is Akroma's Vengeance for 4 and 2 white, so for 6 mana, it's a sorcery, and we're going to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Now, bam, that is everything off the table that we could possibly want to get rid of. And it's also got Cycling 3, which means that if we don't want to do this, we can always discard this card and draw a card for 3 mana. But I suggest you never do this. Just keep this in your hand. It's Commander. There's going to be a time when you're going to want to wipe the board, and that this card does it really, really well. That is it for the removal spells. Let's have a look at the random cards. The first of the random cards is a Loyal Subordinate for 2 and a black. It's a 3/1 zombie with Menace. And it's also got Lieutenant, which means that at the beginning of combat on our turn, if we control our commander, we're going to have each opponent lose 3 life. I don't know what it's doing in his deck. It's a fun card, I suppose, but let's see if we can get a card in there that has a little bit more synergy. And that card would be the upgrade card Lim-Dul's Vault for a blue and a black. It's an instant that allows us to look at the top 5 cards of our library. And as many times as we choose, we can pay 1 life and then put those cards at the bottom of our library in any order, and then look at the next top 5 cards of our library. We can also shuffle our library and then put the last cards we look this way on top in any order. So essentially, we're going to look at 5. Then we can say, okay, I don't like these 5, pay a life. Okay, I'm going to look at the next 5. Okay, I don't like these 5, pay another life. Okay, next 5. Okay, yeah, okay, these are the good 5 cards. Then you're going to shuffle your deck and take those 5 cards. You can put them exactly in the order you want, and that is going to be absolutely insane in this deck. Perfect top deck manipulation. Verena Lich Queen for 1, a white, a blue, and a black. So for 4 mana, we get a 4/4 zombie wizard. Maybe it used to be human. And whenever you attack with 1 or more zombies, draw that many cards, then discard that many cards, you gain that much life. Sure, there's a couple of ways to get zombies in this deck. There's a couple of creatures that are zombies. That's fine, but it also creates its own zombies. By paying 2 mana and exiling 2 cards from our graveyard, we can create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So essentially, it's a nice little engine on its own, benefiting from zombies, turning anything that's in a graveyard, turning those cards, 2 of those cards, into a zombie. So it creates its own army, which is fine. I don't know what it's got anything to do with this deck, but it would be a pretty fun zombie commander by itself. We're going to leave it in, though. Loyal Unicorn costs 3 and a white, so for 4 mana, it's a 4/3 vigilance creature. And additionally, at the beginning of combat on our turn, if we also control our commander, then we're going to prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to creatures we control, and they also gain vigilance this turn. So it's nice for when we got a big army, lots of tokens, we're attacking, got the vigilance, we can block with them later, they don't take any damage. This deck's not really like that. Plus, we even have the inspired creature that really wants to tap anyway. So let's take that out and put in a different card. And the upgrade card we selected is Precognition Field. For 3 and a blue, it's an enchantment that allows us to look at the top card of our library, which means now we don't reveal it, we just get to look at it. This is exactly what this deck wants to do. And additionally, we may cast the top card of our library if it's an instant sorcery card. Sweet. Okay, so now we can actually gain some play cards from the top of our library as long as they're instant sorceries. And this is a nice little addition, paying 3 mana to exile the top card of our library. So if we really don't like it, we can't play it, and we want to get rid of that card because either we want to see if there's something better, or maybe we know what's below that and we want to get to that. For 3 mana, we can exile the top card of our library and get rid of that so we can get to the good stuff. Phyrexian Delver is up next for 3 and 2 black, so for 5 mana, it is a 3/2 zombie. And then when this creature enters the battlefield, we're going to return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield, and we lose life equal to that card's converted mana cost. So this is a nice little reanimation card. Being able to return something, sure, it costs us life, but sometimes being able to get that big fatty back out of the graveyard or that utility creature is completely worth it. I really enjoy this card, and I'm glad that it's in there. Thematic, it may not be, but it's still fine. Geode Golem is next for 5 mana. It's a 5/3 trampler, and when this creature deals combat damage to a player, we may cast a commander from the command zone without paying its mana cost, but we still need to pay additional costs. Yeah, it's a fine card. It's random. Doesn't have anything to do with his deck. Doesn't have anything to do with top deck manipulation. Doesn't have anything to do with flickering. Sure, the Phyrexian Delver didn't have anything to do with that, but at least it used the graveyard synergy with his deck has a little bit more of than this card. So I would recommend that we take this card out, and we're going to upgrade it with Deadeye Navigator for 4 and 2 blue. So for 6 mana, it is a 5/5 spirit with Soul Bond. Now, when this enters the battlefield, we can pair it with another creature, or when another creature enters and it wasn't already prepared, then we can pair them together. And as long as Deadeye Navigator is paired with another creature, both creatures have pay 1 and a blue, exile this creature, then return it to the battlefield under your control. So essentially, if we already have another creature, Deadeye Navigator comes in, we can pair them, and then we can, for example, pay 2 mana. Somebody wants to say, I'm going to instant speed kill Deadeye Navigator. You say, I'm going to pay 2 mana. Deadeye Navigator flickers away, comes back in, pairs again with that same creature. Somebody tries to remove it again. We're going to do the same story. So it's going to be impossible to get rid of, and it's going to be able to give us multiple flicker effects to whatever creature it is going to be paired with. So that is going to be super, super awesome. Next card, Adarkar Valkyrie for 4 and 2 white. So for 6 mana, it is a 4/5 flying vigilance creature. And additionally, whenever we can tap it, and then when target creature other than this creature dies this turn, we're going to return that card to the battlefield under our control. So that's nice. We're going to be removing stuff, and even if we're not removing stuff, but stuff's dying in combat, we can still attack with this creature because it's got vigilance. But should another creature die, bam, we can just tap it. We're going to take that. Super nice. Random, but I do really enjoy this card. Sower of Discord for 4 and 2 black. It's a 6/6 flyer. When this creature enters the battlefield, we're going to choose 2 players. Whenever damage is dealt to one of those players, the other player is also going to lose that much life. So it's a nice little political card. You get a little insurance. You could say, hey, I don't want that person to attack me, so I'm going to link both of us up. So whenever I take damage, you're also going to take damage. So that's kind of fun, and it is a big beater. So you could leave it in. No problem. We would like to recommend an upgrade card, and that is Long-Term Plans for 2 and a blue. It's an instant that allows us to search our library for any card, shuffle our library, and then put it third from the top. So this is great. It's an awesome tutor that gets you anything you want, any problem you want solved. This card will go get it for you, and it'll put it third from the top, and that library manipulation means you get it super, super quick. And of course, you know exactly where you're going to be able to get it. Sarah Avatar is next for 4 and 3 white. So for 7 mana, it is an XX. Its power and toughness is equal to your life total, which of course in Commander could be 40 and higher. And when Sarah Avatar is put into your graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into our library. So it doesn't stay in our graveyard, but you know we do get it back into our library. It is just a massive, massive beater. Nothing to write home about. Quite random, but you know we couldn't take out all the random cards because then we'd replace too many cards, so it stays in there. Silent Blade Oni is next, and that is also the last of the random cards. And that is for 3, 2 blue, and 2 black. So for 7 mana, you see how many oddly costed creatures there are, especially expensive cards in this deck. You'll see how beneficial the other potential commander card is. It's a Demon Ninja, a 6/5. And additionally, whenever this guy deals combat damage to a player, we can look at that player's hand and cast a non-land card in it without paying its mana cost. So essentially, every time we're dealing damage with this card, we can play something from their hand for free, which is going to be absolutely insane. It's also got Ninjutsu for and a black and a blue, so for 6 mana. And we can actually return an unblocked attacker that turn and then swap it out from this one from our hand, tapped and attacking. So if we attack with something smaller and people say, we've got 6 mana open, of course. We attack with something smaller, they say, whatever, I'll take the 2 damage. And then we say, no, actually, I'm paying 6 mana ninjutsu. That one comes back. Bam, we're putting the Silent Blade Oni tapped and attacking, and now all of a sudden we're playing the best thing from your hand. Super sweet, quite random. Nice card though. Let's move on to the utility cards. We divided the utility cards into 2 categories. Those are the draw cards and the ramp cards. Now the first of the draw cards is Predict for 1 and a blue. It's an instant that allows us to name a card, then put the top card of target player's library into his or her graveyard. If that card is the named card, you draw 2 cards, otherwise you draw a card. So essentially, yes, we understand why it's in here, top deck manipulation, we know what the top card is, so we're going to name it. So essentially, we're going to put that one into the graveyard and then draw 2 cards. So drawing 2 cards for 2 mana is pretty good. However, Let's see if we can do something a little bit more powerful. Let's upgrade this card with Magister Sphinx for 4, a white, a blue, and a black. So once again, for 7 mana, we get a 5/5 flying Sphinx. And when it enters the battlefield, target player's life total becomes 10. Needless to say, if this comes in and we're able to flicker it one time again with our commander, that means 2 players have gone down to 10 life, which means that if everybody was still at 40, we dealt 60 damage in just playing 1 card, which is, needless to say, absolutely ridiculous. And of course, also keeps those life gain players under control. Treasure Hunt is next for 1 and a blue. It's a sorcerer. We're going to reveal cards from the top of our library until we reveal a non-land card, then put all cards revealed this way into our hand. Okay, that's a little bit of draw right there. Leave it in, it's not special. Esper Charm is next for a white, a blue, and a black. It's an instant. We're going to choose one of 3 things. We're either going to destroy target enchantment, we're going to draw 2 cards, or target player discards 2 cards. Okay, so I would play this just to draw the 2 cards unless you want to remove an enchantment. And if that fails, probably just keep it in your hand. You don't want to be wasting your mana to and discard to have somebody discard 2 cards in a multiplayer format. Ninja of the Deep Hours is next for 3 and a blue. It's a 2/2, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, we may draw a card. So that's nice. And it's also got ninjutsu for 2. So once again, we can return a unblocked attacker, put this one tapped into place attacking as a surprise, and of course the one that that we remove from combat goes back into our hand, so we can recast that one later. Yuriko the Tiger's Shadow is next for 1, a blue, and a black. It is a 1/3 human ninja, legendary. And the cool thing about this is this card actually cares about ninjas, because whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, we're going to reveal the top card of our library and then put that card into our hand. Each opponent loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost. So it's got the draw, just like the Ninja of the Deep Hours, but essentially it's also dealing damage, and it also has Commander Ninjutsu, which means that for a blue and a black, we're going to do the same ninjutsu thing, but we can do this from the command zone. So it means if this card would be our commander, we can do the same thing, but then from the command zone rather than from our hand. That means we're also avoiding all the commander attacks. This would be a great commander, but not in this deck as is right now. So just leave it in as part of the 99. Then we have Muldrifter for 4 and a blue. It's a 2/2 elemental. And whenever this guy enters the battlefield, we're going to draw 2 cards. We can also evoke it for 3 mana, which is fine. You should just play it for 5, get the 2, then see if you can flicker it somehow so you can draw another 2 cards. This is a great card to flicker. And otherwise, yeah, you can just pay 3 mana to draw 2 cards. Not too bad. Then we move on to the last of the draw spells, and that is Sphinx of Athun for 5 and 2 blue, so for 7 mana. Once again, the odd converted mana cost spells are plenty in this deck, and we get a 5/6 flying Sphinx. Now this is nothing to sniff at. Additionally, when it enters the battlefield, we're going to reveal the top 5 cards of our library, and an opponent separates those cards into 2 piles and put one of those piles into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Now this is already a very powerful effect, drawing us usually 3 cards, and additionally it's also a big beater in the air. So we're going to leave that guy in as well. Now we move on to the ramp spells. The first card is, of course, the first card that ramps in every one of these decks, and that is Soul Ring for a single mana. It taps for 2 colorless mana. It is absolutely broken and ridiculous, but in Commander, apparently, it's fine and dandy. Then, of course, there would be nothing wrong with, on turn 1, ramping it into Azorius Signet after your Soul Ring immediately, because it also costs 2 mana. Oh, well, in this case, it costs 2 mana, so you'd be able to ramp into it, and this one would tap and add us a white and a blue, but we do need to put a mana into it, so it ramps us by 1. Orzhov's Signet also costs 2 mana, and if we pay a mana and tap it, gives us a white and a black, so ramps and color fixes, just like the other one. And Demir's Signet is exactly the same, costs 2, taps for pay a mana and tap it, gives us a blue and a black, so we've got all 3 in here. Then we have Mind Stone for 2 mana. It taps for colorless. We can also pay a mana and tap it to sacrifice it to draw a card. Fine card. I like Mind Stone very much. However, we did decide to upgrade it, and we're going to upgrade this card for Peregrine Drake for 4 and a blue. It is a 2/3 flying drake, and when it enters the battlefield, we're going to untap up to 5 lands. So not only does it come in for free, but if you flicker this thing with your commander, you're getting another free 5 mana additionally next to that, And if you do it later on, you could do it multiple times with, for example, Deadeye Navigator, and then you're going to probably go into infinite mana, which is ridiculous. Commander Sphere costs 3 mana, can tap us for any color of mana from our commander's color identity, and we can also sacrifice it to draw a card. Solid card. Pilgrim's Eye costs 3 mana. It's a 1/1 Flying Thopter, and when it comes into the battlefield, we're going to search our library for a basic card, reveal it, put it into our hand, so it's nice. Doesn't mana ramp us, really. Doesn't mana fix us, and of course, we can flicker this thing to get us multiple activations. Boreas Charger is the last of the ramp cards, and that one costs 2 and a white, and it's one of the new cards from this set. It is a 2/1 with flying, and then when this one leaves the battlefield, so Pilgrim's Eye is when it enters the battlefield, Boreas Charger is when it leaves the battlefield, we're going to choose an opponent who controls more lands than we do, and then we're going to search our library for a number of plains cards equal to the difference between them, and then we're going to reveal them, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest into our hand. Put one of them, revealed, tapped into the battlefield, the rest into our hand, and then shuffle our library. So needless to say, this one leaves the battlefield, comes back in because we flickered it, and we should be then die again. We're going to do it again. So if anybody's really ramping hard, then Boreas Charger allows us to catch up. Not as fast because, of course, it only cheats 1 into play, but still, it also gets us those planes into our hand. That is it for the utility cards. Let's have a look at the lands. Wizards of the Coast divided the lands into 8 plains, 5 islands, 3 swamps, and 24 non-basic lands. Okay, let's run real quick through the non-basic lands. Azorius Guildgate comes in tapped, gives us a white or a blue, which is the same as Orzhov Guildgate, but then a white or a black, and Dimir Guildgate, but this one gives us a blue or a black. Then we have Meandering River, which is the same, but gives us a white or a blue. Forsaken Sanctuary, again the same, white or black, and Submerged Bone Guard, which gives us a blue or a black. Then we have Tranquil Cove, which is the same as before, but then gives us white or blue, and when it enters the battlefield, we gain a life. Then we have, it's the same as Scoured Barrens, but now gives us a white or a black, also gains us a life, and Dismal Backwater, the same, but gives us a black or a blue, and this one also gains us a life. Then we move on to Sigiled Refuge, the same, also gains us a life, also comes in tapped, also gives us a white or a blue, and Jawar Isle Refuge, again the same, tapped, life, gives us black or blue. Then we move on to a different card. Arcane Sanctum comes in tapped. It gives us either a white, a blue, or a black, so it's perfect, the colors that we want. And then we have Azorius Chancery, which comes in tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, we're going to return a land we control back to our owner's hand, but it gives us white and blue this time, which is nice. Orzhov Basilica is the same, but this time it gives us white and black, and Dimir Aqueduct is the same, but gives us a blue and black. Then we move on to Secluded Steppe, comes in tapped, it gives us a white when tapped, but we can also cycle it for a single mana, which means you can discard it and draw a card. Lonely Sandbar is the same, but this time costs blue, and the same as Barren Moor, but this time costs black. New Benalia comes in tapped, and when he enters the battlefield, we're going to scry 1, which is nice, because it's got a little bit that top deck manipulation theme, and additionally it taps for a white mana. Halimar Depths also comes in tapped. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to look at top 3 cards of our library and then put them back in any order. Also, but this one taps for a blue, so it's nice. Also kind of the manipulation, you know. We don't get to scry, so don't get rid of the cards, but we do get to order up those top 3. And Mortuary Mire comes in tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, we put the top creature card from our graveyard back on top of our library, and this one taps for black. So once again, also that top deck manipulation. These are perfect cards in here. Love it. Then we have Forge of Heroes, a unique card of this set. Once again, taps for a colorless, but we can also tap it and have target commander that enter the battlefield this turn get a +1/+1 counter if it was a creature, or a loyalty counter if it was a planeswalker. We, of course, have the planeswalker in this case. It's going to come in with an extra loyalty counter, which is nice. Isolated Watchtower taps for a colorless, but we can also pay 2, tap it to scry 1. Then we reveal the top card of our library. If it's a basic land card revealed this way, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Activates the ability only if an opponent controls at least 2 more lands than you. Yeah, this is a lot of text. Nice if it works. Totally worth it. Regardless of whether you get that land, being able to scry on a land is always nice. And the command tower, it taps for a mana of any color of our commander's color identity. That is it for the lands. Let's have a look at the conclusion. in conclusion, this deck's theme is kind of all over the place. Now, we love the idea of a commander deck that focuses on top deck manipulation, on changing the order of the top deck of your cards and being able to gain some kind of value out of that. And even though we tried our best to get as many upgrade cards to focus on that strategy, they were simply not enough within our reasonable budget that we'd be able to change the deck to focus entirely on that. Therefore, we actually had to include a lot of upgrade cards which focused on the secondary theme, and that is the flickering. But we couldn't add too many cards that also flicker and too many extra cards that would also benefit from the flickering. So actually spreading out all those themes over this deck simply made it a little bit more disjointed. So separately, we love all the themes and we love each one of those separately, but I don't know if we could truly make it work in a very smooth and efficient manner in one single deck with this commander. So take that for what you will. Interesting, absolutely. Is it super synergistic? No. Can it be thematic? Possibly. Just have a look at the suggestions for the upgrades and see whether you personally think that this is something that you would like to pilot. And of course, with the suggestions we gave you, that would be below $25 in upgrades, and it's around 15 cards. We do that for all these decks because we didn't want to replace every single card in the deck. That would also not be any fun. So it's about 15 cards, about $25 for all of these decks to upgrade them. Also, if you want to help us make more of these videos, if you like these videos, you want to help us out, head on over to patreon.com/budgetmtgdecks and consider donating as little as $1 per month, because it would help the show out immensely. So we'd like to thank also all our current patrons for making these videos possible. And of course, if you are on the socials, as they say, if you are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, then you simply must join us there because we post non-budget upgrades. We announce when new videos are coming out. We share pictures of stuff that we're doing over here. All that good stuff, and most importantly, it allows you to interact with us, because one thing that we love the most is talking with you guys about the decks, about cards, about brewing, about everything. We love to hear from you guys. So, and the best way to do that is to join us either on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and you can talk to us there at BudgetMTGDecks. Also, subscribe to us here on YouTube for the most powerful decks and advice everyone can afford. And if you do, don't forget to hit the little bell button, because then you'll be part of the notification crew. And that means that we sent you a digital hug because we love you so much. Also, you'll get notified when a new video comes out. So that's just an added bonus. That is it. Thanks for watching. I'm David, and this was BudgetMTGDecks.